This video will be a little technical, a little bit complicated, but very important. We will install MySQL Workbench and a MySQL Server. You'll need both in almost every lecture until the end of the course. Let's look at MySQL's website, www.mysql.com. Select the Download section and click on Community, as we would like to show you how to download a file that is open source and free. We will go through the installation process for a machine operating on Windows, but please remember the video will be useful if you are installing the software on a machine running on Mac OS or Linux, as what needs to be done is similar. So, I'll click on MySQL on Windows. You can either download MySQL components and tools separately, or download the MySQL installer, then choose which tools you would like to install from there. The second option is much quicker and easier to implement. That's why we will select the installer. Scroll down to where you see two versions of the installer. Before discussing them, please pay attention to this important note. MySQL Workbench, its installer, and all software tools are constantly being updated to solve different bugs and whatnot. This is why, during the installation process, we can be left with the impression that the components we are installing are different versions. This is not an issue. Usually, the changes between different versions are marginal. That's why they would not affect the execution of the tasks presented throughout this course. So please, if you are about to download a version of MySQL that is older or newer than the one you see in this video, remember, you can take this course and apply all code used in the lectures and exercises without experiencing issues. Now that we said that, let's focus our attention on the two options provided. The first one is suitable for those of you who have internet connection throughout the installation process. The second will be appropriate if you will just download the file and then install the software when you are offline. Naturally, the first one is better. Select the relevant Download button. A page offering you to log in or sign up for an Oracle web account will open. This is not an obligatory requirement, so you can press No thanks, just start my download. Then, a new window will pop up. Select the directory where you would like the installer file to be downloaded. When you've done that, click on Save. We don't need the MySQL page anymore, so you can open the installer and wait for it to load. Right. This is the MySQL installer window. To proceed, you must accept the Oracle software license terms. You can do this by ticking this little box at the bottom of the window and then clicking on Next. What comes up are a few different setup types. We need not discuss all of them. For our purposes, Custom will allow us to specify the tools we need. So, let's select Custom and click on Next. OK. At this stage, you can select the products to be installed. In the Resources section of this video, you can find a file explaining why we will need MySQL Workbench and a MySQL Server. Fine. So, first, expand the Applications section, then the MySQL Workbench subsection, and then click on the name of the tool and on the little green arrow to move it to the section of Products or Features to be installed. Good. Now, we must add a server. Expand the MySQL Server section, then the MySQL Server subsection. And finally, choose one of the two versions, the 64-bit or the 32-bit, which is called x86. I will be coherent with the Workbench feature, so I'll select the 64-bit version. Great! We are done selecting features. Click on Next to move to the next stage of the installation process. After you have specified the products and features you need, depending on your operating system, the installer might want you to check if these products meet certain requirements. In that step, you could be provided a suggestion about how to satisfy these requirements. For instance, the installer might ask you to download an additional piece of software. Alternatively, the status of a certain requirement will be marked as manual. This will mean that you have to find a way to solve the issue on your own. Please remember that you will rarely have a problem with this step if you stick to the setup types suggested in this video. Nevertheless, the issue that people might sometimes encounter arises when they have an older version of Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable on their computer. Although this is free software, it is not part of the installation setup, and its version might not be the one you'll need in order to proceed smoothly. Should this be the case, please access the link provided in the article attached to this video. It will take you to a Microsoft Support webpage. Scroll down and choose the English United States version of the file path for the 64-bit version of Visual C++. Download and install the file. Then, you can go back to the MySQL installer. You should be able to proceed with the installation of the MySQL Server, just as shown in this video. To conclude, please follow the suggestions offered by the MySQL installer. However, if you need further assistance, please do not hesitate to write us in the Q&A section of the course, and we will be happy to help you find a quick solution. Having said that, let's go back to the installation process. Press Execute to install Workbench and the MySQL Server package. Once this is done, the status of both features will be marked as complete. This means we are ready to proceed. Let's click Next again. You'll move to the stage of product configuration, the last step of the installation process. The status of the server should become Ready to configure. This means you can move a step further. OK. Now, you will adjust the configurations of your server. We need not go into details. Keeping the default settings in the next 2 pages will let us install a version that will suit the purposes of this course. So, just click Next 2 times. It is important to mention that in the newer versions of the MySQL installer, the sections in the column on the left-hand side have been organized differently. A section named Authentication Method will appear. Naturally, the more recent of the 2 options has been recommended. However, although it has its advantages, it will not be needed for the scope of this course. Therefore, in this video, we will proceed by choosing the Legacy Authentication Method. Should you be interested in choosing the SHA-2 Password Authentication plugin, please consult the New Authentication plugin Creating a New User video found later in this section. OK. Now, we suggest selecting the second option and then clicking on Next. Aha! This step is crucial, and it must not be overlooked. Here, you are being asked to set up a root password. And you mustn't forget your password, because it will be hard to change or recover it later. Otherwise, root refers to the main connection established between you, as a user, and the MySQL server you are about to install. So, I will set up and confirm a password I won't forget. It will be 365pass. Regardless of the fact I am told it is weak. Press Next once more, and keep all the settings that just appeared as they are, especially the ones regarding the start of the MySQL server at system startup. Unless you leave this option ticked, you must set up the server manually when you use SQL, and that's not a straightforward operation. OK, press Next again. You will be offered to install a plugin that contains improvements on previous versions of Workbench, but it will not be relevant for our course. So please skip this step by clicking Next once more. And finally, execute. Wait until the installation is complete and click on Finish. You won't need to go through the wizard that appears, so click on Next. Then, leave the tick on Start MySQL Workbench after setup and press Finish. Now, Workbench will load, and you can set up a connection between Workbench and the MySQL Server. We'll learn to do that in our next video. Thank you for watching.